How's it going? Hey, Tom. See if I get in trouble playing any of these. How's it sound, actually? I haven't played this guitar in, I'm not going to say in a year, but it's been quite a while. So I'm getting used to the heavy strings, flat wounds. Not really my my regular jam right now, but I figured it'd be fun to play. I was actually doing some stuff. So one of the things that I thought might be kind of fun. Oops. What just happened there? Nope. Hang on a second. Me and my technology. I've got this app where it just plays drums, right? Me and Jazz aren't getting along too good today. This okay. Any questions? Anyone? Before I actually get started doing something. I figured today would be kind of thankfully for all of us, I don't know Stranglehold. So kind of wondering if I'm going to get any trouble for some of the stuff that I've been playing. The YouTube has issues with copyrights of certain tunes. Great White Buffalo Hunter. Yeah, thankfully for the world, I don't know very much, Ted. So, I guess I'll get started. I was kind of hoping to wait for a few other people. I'm going to switch guitars, though, because I'm being a wuss about the archtop. I feel it's funny because when I play this guitar, I feel compelled to play stuff that would be difficult on any other guitar, and then I'm also struggling with like the fact that it's also, you know, got 11 gauge flat wounds or 12 gauge flat wound. I think it's got 11s on it at the moment. I could be wrong. So let me play something kind of comfortable to jam over while we're waiting for folks to come in. I'd say I'd take requests, except for the fact that Tom screwed it up for everybody. No Coltrane tonight. You guys want to learn stuff from me that I actually can do. I don't want to complain about the weather. It's being in my garage. It's colder than it is in the house. We'll leave it at that. And my guitars have been kind of freaking out. Where's something interesting? Chicago Blues Shuffle in A, because I don't play enough of this stuff. I suck at slides, so let's do some. There you go. That's about it. All right, let's quit screwing around. Let's talk about chords and rhythms. So I'm going to come back to the archtop just for a second, just to make life a little bit more realistic. I'm not even going to plug it in. And we're going to talk kind of about the very first kind of comping that most people do when you learn how to play jazz, and that is Freddie Green style. And the deal with Freddie Green style is that Freddie Green played in the Count Basie band. He played in a way that it kind of evolved from how people played. Oops. Actually, let me start here for a second. Like if we're going to do a blues, if you think about what string instruments did early on, early jazz, you didn't have guitar in the very beginning of jazz. We dealt with a lot of things that New Orleans jazz was pretty much about banjo. And then eventually it went tenor guitar for a little bit of time. There were some guitar players, what's his face that played with Big Speederbeck, Lang, so Eddie Lang. We all know about Django Reinhardt, people like that. But originally when we weren't amplified, a lot of the playing would be on archtop guitars. This is an archtop guitar. It's got pickups. This is before electrification. All right, and archtop guitar is not particularly loud, especially in an ensemble. So typically, right, you're basically playing quarter notes. You're keeping the quarter note going. You can almost think of, a group, even like a bluegrass group, where if you don't have a drum set, usually the bass player is doing 1 in 5 kind of a 2 feel, right? And then that's almost like the kick drum in a drum set. And then, the banjo player might. like that kind of deal. Oh, when the saints, when the saints go marching in, oh, when the saints go marching. All right, and you get this kind of feel where you're kind of hitting the backbeats, but it's really quarter note based, and because you're on 2 and 4, and the bass player's going doom 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 doom, right? It kind of interacts almost like a drum set does. All right. Well, when bands get bigger, and we kind of start playing more guitar, you start getting where you don't hear the guitar so much because you've got this large ensemble. You know, a full jazz band could have, 4 trumpet players, 4 trombone, 5 saxes if you include the Barry, bass, piano, which was more important really. Guitar players, we weren't that important overall. And the easiest way to be heard and actually be part of the rhythm section is play quarter notes and basically be the rhythmic anchor for a lot of stuff. If you listen to the Count Basie Orchestra, there's always Freddie Green, and when it's loud, you don't hear him. And when it's quiet and the band comes down dynamically, you start hearing this kind of deal. All right. If I'm playing a blues, so let's oops, not that one. So say I've got this chord progression here, and I'm going to divide this up into, we'll just do a 12-bar blues here to start with, because it's kind of all the same. Now if we're playing a jazz 12-bar blues, we're not doing the typical 5-chord and 4-chord in the 9th and 10th bar. So say we're playing in B flat, because we're talking about jazz, so B flat 7. Typical blues, you'd have 4 bars of the 1 chord, 2 bars of the 4 chord, 2 bars of the 1 chord. We have the 1 chord back down here. All right, and then a lot of times you'd have the 5 chords, so go like F to E flat in those places. But in reality, when we're playing jazz, we tend to play more of the 2 and the 5. So this would be C minor 7, and then this would be F7, right? So this is 2, and this is 5. So if I go through and I label this stuff, 1 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord, 2, 5, and then 1. All right. Now, a jazz progression like this, or jazz blues, we're going to add some chords in here. This in blue, right? So we can put the 4 chord here. This is pretty typical even for regular blues. Right. And then back to the 1 chord. For what we're doing here, I'm going to add an E diminished chord, fully diminished. We talked about this on the forum earlier today. I'm going to say sharp 4 diminished. And then we can also go D minor 7 flat 5 to G7. All right. Now here's the deal, that this thing I just put in here, the important chord here is the G7, which is like the 6th chord. So in a way, this is like 3 to 6, but dominant. All right. But also, and this is an important thing to think about when you're comping, is that this is still 2, 5, and then 1 in the key of C minor. Right? So you have this 2, 5, 1 chord progression, 2, 5, which leads you into the next 2, 5, 2, 5, and then back into the B flat. You find that a blues chord progression does a lot of this sort of thing. You'll even find we could put F minor 7, B flat 7, right? And then this is 2, 5, and then 1 in the key of E flat. All right, so what happens is that in a blues, you know, we get a little bit of what we do in jazz. Here's the B flat, and then 2, 5, and there's the 4 chord, which is the one of those. There's the diminished chord, B flat. I'm going to go D, G, and that feels like it leads to the 2 chord, 2, 5, and then 1. We'll do a turnaround, 6, 2, 5, 1. Okay, so I'm skipping through a lot of stuff. I'm assuming that you guys know certain things about harmony. And if you have questions, please ask them, and I will go back and I will answer those. But basically, a lot of this stuff that I'm putting in here, especially the stuff in the red, doesn't have to be in the chord progression for us to use later on when we're talking about comping, like in a more swing style. Because a lot of times, yeah, you can actually use those as ways to lead into each chord, and they're not necessarily parts of the progression as much as they're just leading you into the next part of the progression, which is important. So, first things first, we're talking about Freddie Green. We can't just play like, right? This style of music, the guitar is being played underneath a full big band, right? So you have a very arranged group. You have, you know, what, 12, 14 people playing horns. Everyone is harmonized a certain way. And as a guitar player, harmonically, you want to stay out of the way of that stuff. So there are important notes that are structural to the chord, and then there are notes that are color. And if we're playing in this situation, where there's all these other instruments playing all those color notes, the important notes that we have to play are the 3rd and the 7th, and then maybe the root or the 5th, but we don't have to play all of them. Now, when I first learned how to play Freddie Green chords, first I was doing this, which is not very jazzy sounding. And I had a teacher, my first real good teacher, this guy named Tom Hines. He taught me this way of playing. Basically, you can play notes on the bottom 4 strings, 6, 5, 4, and 3, as long as you leave out the note on the 5th string, and it'll sound okay. If I was to play like B flat 7, and I have the note in between here, we've talked about this with other rock chord voicings too, that's really thick sounding. One of the things that you find is that when you have a lot of the root, those all have overtones, all those notes. And then the first overtone, like harmonic overtone, that is not the root, the fundamental note, is also the 5th. So this note, even though you don't really hear it as like harmonized like that, it still has the 5th in there. So then when you put the 5th in there, that makes it even stronger, especially in that lower octave. All right, so what we try and do is we try and make sure that we leave some of that stuff out to clear it out, right? So instead of playing, so here's this B flat here. So there's the root. And I'm going to play, this is the minor 7 and the major 3. Now here's the deal with this, is we did talk about all this chord construction in the last live stream. All right, so if you're watching this and you get a little confused, definitely by all means go back and watch the last one. And if you go in the video description below, you'll actually see links to the entire series of fretboard lessons that I've been doing. The last one, number 7, is actually the one where I actually build all of these chords. Now, in addition to that, there's also a link to the guitar chord packet, which is basically just a chunk out of the end of my book, Foundations for Guitar. And there's 3 or 4 pages, and you got open chords, movable chord shapes, so you got some power chords, partial shapes, bar chords. All right, and then we've got, starting here at the bottom, you've got dominant chords. Now the one that I'm starting off with here is actually part of this guy. All right, and this note here, that's the root. There's the minor 7, and then there's the 3rd. And then we're not playing the 5th, but the 5th is right there. And you could do that if you wanted to. It's just kind of extra. All right, this chord here, that's the big bar chord. that's too big for this kind of playing. You want to actually just play just enough in the way of notes for these chords to outline the harmony, but not so much that you start getting in the way of the other instruments. All right. This guy right here, he's pretty good, although usually I'll leave out that note. And then sometimes we'll add, whoops. We'll add this guy here, and that makes it a 9 chord. All right. And then I also, like this guy here, right? And what this guy has is, this is the root, third, and then minor 7. So he's got all the notes too. You typically don't want to be playing things that are too high up on the fretboard though, too high in register, because you start getting up here, and this is where instruments like the trumpet and the alto saxes are playing register-wise. And a lot of what we have to worry about when we're actually playing these notes is that we have to occupy a certain amount of space that doesn't interfere with other people's space. Right? So if I come back to here for a second, you know what, let's plug this guy in. All right, these chords I'm playing are typically going to be down here. Turn this down a little bit. All right, I could play those chords up here. I can go, or even or here's the B7, here's E7, right? And then you get all these notes up here, and then you also have a trumpet player, or you have some other instrument playing the melody, or a singer. And then you're playing this note, and then maybe they need to sing this note in the melody, and it gets in the way. But if you need to play that note and you play it an octave lower, then it's not going to actually conflict with the instruments that are above you. And when we're accompanying, we're not the most important part. We're supporting the most important part, whether that's a singer, whether that's another instrumentalist playing a melody. So you really want to make sure that your chords are doing a couple things. One of them is staying out of the register of that other performing instrument. All right. And that's why a lot of these chords we're going to be playing down in this area, or even like this. For this part at least. When we start comping, that's going to be a different deal. Like more piano style, like that. And then also, you don't want to put too much harmonic information into these chords, because the other instruments are actually playing those notes. And, you know, you may be playing, you know, a 7th chord like this, and maybe the melody might have like a sharp 5 or a flat 9 or something like that. And so you're playing this, and then they're playing this note. And if you're just not playing that note, and they play that, it's not so big of a deal. But if you're playing a note and then the melody has to play something that's a half step or a whole step away, it's going to get really hard to listen to. All right, so that's I guess that's a big part of this, is actually making sure that you're paying attention to the context that you're playing in, and you're not playing anything that's going to interfere with that. And as usual, Tom says the exact right thing. You want to stay in your lane when it comes to this stuff. Everyone's got a lane. If you're playing drums, if you're playing bass, if you're playing with a piano player, that's a whole nother set of issues. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's, so, you know, the chord that I'm playing here, actually, let's bring this kind of, oops. Yeah, I'll just do it this way. All right, so the chord that I'm playing here is going to be this shape for the dominant 7th chord. So that's a 7th chord. And then if I need a root on the 5th string, I could play this 7th chord. I could play it as a 9th chord. You can even play it all the way down to here if you need to, or if it doesn't get in the way. The other thing that you can do is that you can play it, like if you've got the root here, we can ignore that note, put a finger here, here, and here. And this is still that 7th chord. All right, 2, 1, 3, no note there. All right, but there's no root there. All right, and that's okay too. You never have to play a root in these chords, because you know what? Someone else is always playing that root. Yeah, it really, really is that. So kind of keep that in mind. So if I'm playing this, I've got these chords that work pretty good through this chord progression. We need a diminished chord. All right, so the thing with the diminished chord, fully diminished, is that every note is a root, believe it or not. Because every note is a minor third away from each other. All right. So 2, 1, 3. All right. You can also play this guy here, and you can say, hey, that part kind of looks like that 7th chord, except for then we got this guy here. So 2. We're going to bar that right there. Okay, so if I go back to where these chords are, I've got the dominant 7. This is the first one on the page. Well, actually, let's do it this way. All right, so that chord here we're going to use for B flat, which is on the 6th fret. When we get to the E flat, we can use this one. All right, so this is the 6th fret, that's the root, that's the E flat. And this is giving us root, 3 and minor 7. We go back and forth between those two. And then a minor 7 chord. All right, so we know that the difference between a dominant and a minor chord. I'm going to make this minor 7 world. We can play the root, and then here. All right, and this is a actually this is a minor 7, right? Because so it's just like your dominant 7, but that third, it's just getting moved down a fret. We can also, just like when we did the dominant chord, we played the 5th in the bass. You could also do it this way. Same chord. All right, and you got the E flat dominant there. You could also play as a major chord. So dig this. The chord that we just played here, so this is just major, and this 2, 1, 4. All right, and those notes in this chord, this is the 5, 3 roots. That's just a triad. And what's cool about this one, you can see, okay, if this is the root, major 7, or you could play it with the root in the bass, major 7. You can bring this guy down one more fret, that makes it dominant 7. You can bring the first finger down a fret, that makes it minor 7. This minor 7, if you bring it down another fret, I have to change the fingering, that becomes a minor 6 chord. Alright, you can even, like, you know, you can keep that 5th in the bass. Right? So you can go like root, major 7, minor 7. You know, it's kind of like one of those Kesh things where you got the chromatic embellishment of a static harmony. You do stuff like that. I'm going to pause for a second. I'm kind of yammering and covering a lot of territory kind of quickly. But these chord voicings are great for this kind of playing, where you're basically playing more rhythm. Oh, I'm missing comments here. Hang on a second. Sonic Lane Staley says, yeah. Okay, you guys are losing me, but that's okay. Once again, Tom, too much staying. Yes. Basically what it comes down to is play it right. But with these chords, if I'm playing a blues, right, and it's a swing blues, oops, not that, but I can just play with the drum genius here. Oops. See what this one sounds like. 2, 1, 2, 2. That's pretty fast. All right, you could be doing that sort of thing through there. That's still pretty fast, but that gives you kind of an idea of one of the ways that you can play this kind of Freddie Green style. This makes more sense in a big band, but also like if you're playing like jump blues, or even if you're jamming with someone. I could do it, you know, every day I've got the blues. No, every day I've got the blues. If you see me worrying, you know it's you I hate to lose. Now nobody loves me, nobody seems to care. Nobody loves me, nobody seems to care. Worries and trouble, you know I've had my share. Alright. I just realized I haven't been singing for the last year too. I'm like, hey, maybe I should start singing a little bit more. So I apologize for that. But here, so this is a batch of chords. You got minor 7. Let me go back to the sheet here for a second. With the root on the, whoops. Let's do the official color of chords. This is also minor 7. So second finger, mute that guy. 3, 3, 3 for the bar. All right, so you have some options. Also with this guy here, if you add that green note, it becomes a minor 9. You just bar that guy there, or even bar all the way down. All right, so remember when we were playing this 7th chord, right? So it comes from like the whole like cowboy C7 chord here, right? If I move it up here to the F, which is where we're going to be dealing with this for a second, all right, I can just play these 3 notes, which are the root, 3rd, minor 7. I can add the note on the 2nd string, this G note here, which becomes a 9 chord, or if I lower the 3rd, it becomes a minor 9. Other things that you can do, if you play this chord and you raise the 9th up 1 fret, that's a 7 sharp 9, like Jimi Hendrix. Yeah, like that kind of deal. What you find is that you don't really learn chords by rote anymore. You just start kind of recognizing what notes that you need within these shapes, and you just start grabbing them. Right? So like with this one, like, okay, so here's F major. We don't like that. There's F minor. These don't work for this kind of playing. There's F minor 7. That's not awful. Right? F minor 7 flat 5. There's the 5. I can lower it. F minor 7 flat 5. We're going to use that a bunch. Right? I can also go, here's F major from the C shape from Caged. F7 from that C shape. F9, F7 sharp 9, F9, F flat 9. So I've just taken that note and moved it down 1. There's the F7 again. F minor 7, F minor 9 with the 5. If I go back to the F9 and put the pinky out here, I know that's an F13. Right. So all of this stuff kind of exists around here. I can go F minor 11. Right. I know that's the minor 11 because it's root. That 4 is the 11. Minor 7, and then the minor 3rd right there. All right. Now, keep in mind, I'm going through a lot of stuff not to teach you all of these chords, but to kind of show you the idea that, hey, you know what? Actually, these chords are all here, and you actually just get to the point where you start knowing where notes are to manipulate them to get these other sounds that you need. It's not like you're memorizing a million chords. All right, you're kind of memorizing the formula that makes these chords. But then I know, like I just said, that minor 11 chord, for instance, right? So if I wanted to, there's the F, right? The 11 was B flat, minor 7, minor 3rd. I could do it there. Instead of doing it here, I could do it there, voiced a little bit differently. Minor. You do it up there if I wanted to. You know, you basically just start knowing where to play this stuff because you start recognizing where the notes are relative to the root. You start knowing which notes actually make up certain sounds. And you also start recognizing with your ears where these sounds go. And that just comes from time and learning music and doing a little bit of study. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second. Can you guys hear this? I'm not really going through the amp very much. The guitar doesn't really need it. Nice. I think these strings are at least 1.5 years old. Okay, so those are most of the chord shapes I would use for like that blues if I was doing it as Freddie Green. Chords I didn't talk about. This guy here is a minor 7, flat 5, like for the D. All right. But you'll also find that if you take that same shape and consider this guy here the root, this is a 9 chord without the root. You know, a lot of this stuff you kind of discover that, like, and I think I talked about this actually. They keep it in here. Oops. Yeah, I think last week when we were doing this stuff, you know, we talked about the fact that like in the C major 7 chord, right? We got root 3, 5, 7. But if you start at the E, this is root 3, 5 for the E minor. All right, so you actually have bits and pieces of chords that get you the harmony you need without actually filling the whole thing out. If I needed a C major 7, you know, I could always just play a little E minor triad as long as someone else is playing the. Here, I'll show you. As long as someone else is playing the root, instead of me going whole C major 7 or C major 7, I could just play E minor, like out of this E minor bar chord. And the root that the bass player is playing will actually make this sound like the major 7 chord because it's everything all together. So, mug cameo. Got my finger over the bad words, huh? All right, so that's like if I was gonna Freddie Green style through a blues, those are some of the chords I could use. All right, now if I'm playing over like that swing blues style, it's kind of important to do some rhythms. Now I've got this packet. I'm gonna fess up here. Instead of me writing all this stuff down and making my own packet, there's a guy named Jens Larson who does really good lessons on this kind of thing. And there's going to be a link. There is a link below. I don't know if you can see it during the live stream. To his lesson that this comes from. And it's all about basic comping rhythms. We're only going to do a few of them just to get you thinking about it. But literally, it's a great lesson. He's got 10 different rhythms that you use. And it's great for this kind of playing. So I guess the easiest thing to do is let's do this with a metronome. So you can hear this stuff specifically. No matter what you're playing, that's really loud, isn't it? no matter what it is that you're playing, you still have to feel the quarter note through it. Right? Typically, if I was doing something like this at this tempo, 2, 3, 4, I would actually put the metronome on 2 and 4. All right, and I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. This will give you a better jazz feel. It also make you feel the quarter note better because you're having to fill in the strong beats. All right, you know, you should be able to feel quarter notes when it's just giving you the backbeats like that. Let me tune. I'd say I'd switch to the guitar that doesn't have really old strings on, except for that's not staying in tune very well in my garage either tonight. So the first rhythm that we're gonna kind of deal with here. Actually, let's do these on a just a blank sheet. Okay. So if we're counting here in a measure, just one measure, 1, that's an eighth rest, and that's 2, and then half rest. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4. The notes that we're playing on are 1 and then the and of 2. All right, so 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3. And they call this a Charleston beat. It, you know, it basically was popularized by the song The Charleston, the dance from the 20s. 1, 3, 4, 1, 2. You could also 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2. The biggest thing is that you have syncopation, where you're not just playing like the Freddie Green is on all the strong beats. And you're not going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. That doesn't feel very good either for what we're playing. What we want to do is play something that's syncopated. Now, if you count eighth notes, it's like if we take this rhythm here, and we go 1 and 2 and, we have this pattern. There's a group of 3 right here, and then 1, 1, 2, and 3, 4, right? That you're on the strong beat here, and then you're on the and, which is like the weak part of the beat, and that's where your syncopation feels good. 1, 2, and 3. Basically, you're shifting the accent to something other than the strong beat. You're not going 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. You could go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3. All right, and that's almost like more like New Orleans street music, with that kind of and what's happening there is I'm singing the accents, you know, back. Oops. So if I can do this. Oops, kind of hard to do this way, but all right. And what you'll kind of see here is that this hand, like if we're thinking strong beats, and this hand is like the weak 1, 2, and 3, right? Every other accent is on the other hand, right? So accent, accent, all right, and it's over a quarter note, right? Whether it's 16th notes or 8th notes or whatever. But that's where your syncopation comes from, is this idea that you're actually switching between strong beats and weak beats, essentially. All right, and when we're comping these rhythms, a lot of that rhythm stuff happens between the downs and the ups. Does that make sense? I'm going to pause or slow down just for a second. That's basically your Charleston. So 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, and 3. We could reverse that if we wanted to. So that's on the end of 1. We're going to put a rest. That's my quarter rest. I apologize for that. That's on 3, and that's so 1 and 2. All right. So in a way, 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3. The same thing as 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1 and 2. And 3. It just shifted over by 8th note. 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2. And at the core of it, it still has this idea of 3 and then 1 basically. All right, because if we take this rhythm here, all right, and then there's this rest here, it's a quarter rest. I swear if I could write a good quarter rest. All right, but what happens here is that is worth 1/8 note and the quarter rest is worth 2. And then that guy right there is the 1 again. So it's kind of another way of looking at syncopations, right? If you can break it up like that, then suddenly this becomes a little bit easier to conceptualize. All right. So what you could do, it's funny in the Jens Larson book, he calls it the shifted Charleston. 2, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4. But what you could do, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 and 2. You can combine those rhythms. So like if we do a 2-bar pattern, we'll do it in 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2. This one might be a little bit easier to hear, believe it or not. There's the rest there. Sorry, I'll write the counting underneath this so it's not a total mess. And that's a half rest right there. All right, so counting on this one, that's the and. 1 is the rest. 2 is a rest. I'll put those in parentheses, and then you play on 3. 4 is also a rest, and then 1, 2 is a rest, so you play on the and then 3 and 4 are also rests. So if I was just to clap this, which is a good way to do this, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and do it swing. 2, 3, and 4, 1, and 2, 3, and 4, 1, and 2, and 3, 1, and 2, 3, and 4, 1, 2, and 3. So if you're playing chords, 1, 2. So I just play the B flat and 2, and then the E flat on the second rhythm. Or I could switch those around and go 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2. All right. You can mix and match these rhythms, but the basic idea is that you want to feel some of these patterns pretty instinctively and be able to feel it around the quarter note. All right, that's the important thing. Any questions? Comments? All right, so that's one kind of rhythm. You could all right, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, so that rhythm right there, another 2-bar pattern. There's a rest, 8th rest. 1, 2, 3. This is tied across, which means that you don't hit the next note. All right, so the counting on this guy here, 1, 2, 3 is a rest, 4 is a rest. That's the and. Now, when you change chords on something like this, if there is a rhythm across the bar line, like right here, you always change the chord on the and of 4. So if I got B flat 7, I'm going to change to the E flat 7 there. Now let me go back to the counting for a second. So 1, 2, and then 3, they're all, you're not playing on them, you're sustaining on 1 and 2, and then 3 is just the rest, and that's the and of 3, and then 4 is a rest right there. So that rhythm, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, 2 and 3. Now I actually played this differently originally. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I actually played it with change this. I like what I played before better. Eighth note on the end of 3. So 3 is a rest. And you got the and there. All right, so 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3. All right. There's so many variations on these patterns. It's just not even funny, and we're not going to get through all of the possible ones, and you really wouldn't want to. But the idea is that if you took a simple chord progression and just practiced a few of these, it gets easier, you know. Or if you start using some of these like over the blues, like if I go back to the B flat blues, that's shuffle an A, that's some dark Trax thing. Here we go. I could do the Charleston Beat. As I swapped it up there. Now I'll do the reverse. 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4, 1 and 2, 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 and 3. All right. Then the next one, maybe I'll combine the two. All right, so let's do the next one I've written down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1 and 2, and 3, 4, 1 and 2, and 3, and 4, and 2, and 3, 4, 1 and 2, and 3, 4, and 2, and 3, 4, 1 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 and 2, and 3. Right? You just practice these rhythms over any chord progression. And just get the chords to change where they're supposed to change in the bar. And pretty soon you're doing some kind of basic comping. It's really repetitive. It's not the most inspiring thing, but it gets you used to feeling the time like this. And I think that's the most important part. All right, let's take a little break. Remember, I'm not going to go through all of these. It's a really good thing. The Jens Larsen video, if you really like this, go check out his video. I really like it. I think it's useful. But there's a million of these variations you can do. All right, and then the next thing is that you got to expand your chord vocabulary. If you start playing like the piano stuff, and if you notice even in this blues, he's playing stuff on the upper register. Small group, I can get away with playing more stuff. There's no horns. All right, so if I want to, I can play the jazzier chord voicings with more interesting things going on, even putting in those 2 5s and stuff in there if they're not already in the bass line. And it's going to sound fine. All right, and it's going to sound fine for a couple of reasons. One of them is the fact that you're not interfering with any other like arrangement that's going on above you with the horns. The other thing is that, like, say we've got this, if I go back to the chord progression here, one of these things is what we're working on. All right, remember here in the red, I've got this where it's the 2 5 into the 4 chord. Now, we're in the key of B flat pretty much. All right, and if you know anything about jazz harmony, you know that, instead of going 1 4 5 like we do in rock and roll and more traditional blues styles, 2 to 5 is really how we define a key, and then 2 5 really wants to resolve to 1. In a way, the 2 chord is really just the 5 chord, almost like a suspended 4 or 5 chord, and then wants to resolve. But you can do that 2 5 to lead into any chord, really, and it's going to push you there. So, you know, if I wanted to, I'm playing 1, and if I go 1 2 3 4, I go 2 5 into E flat. The 2 and the 5 of E flat. You have to keep that in mind. I can't do 2 5 of B flat because that's just going to lead me back to the B flat. Right, C minor F 7. That wants to go to B flat. F minor, that's the 2 chord in E flat. B flat is the 5 chord in E flat, and then there's the E flat. So we treat the 4 chord almost like we've modulated to a no key for a second, and that's part of the. It pushes you in there. That diminished chord's just kind of cool there. 1. Now you could just go dominant 6, the G7 chord, right? Because what happens, you get this cycling of chords that are a fifth away. Now remember when we talked about chord progressions a few lessons ago, I mentioned the fact that the strongest root movement when you're writing music is from the 5 chord to the 1. All right, it basically wants to, you know, that's the farthest distance you can play, and it's a very strong sound. It wants to do that, right? And you can cycle those. You know, 1, I go C to F, which is 5 to 1 in F, and then I go F to B flat, which is 5 to 1 in B flat, and then B flat to E flat, which is 5 to 1 in E flat, and then E flat to A flat, which is 5 to 1 in A flat, right? And you get, you know, you just cycle those or back cycle those chords. We're not really going to do that, but what happens in a blues is that, you know, people will put that 6 chord there, the G7 in B flat, because it wants to go to the C, which happens to be the 2 of B flat, the key we're in. And then that 2 chord, especially if we make it a dominant chord, wants to go to the 5, because that's the 2 chord is the 5 of the 5 chord. It gets confusing. And then the 5 chord is the 5 of there. So that's a real strong root movement, right? And if you were to do it in a major key with all the right chords in like B flat major, it would be G minor, C minor, F major, B flat. Not quite as compelling, but when you make them the dominant chords, they really want to lead into those other chords there, and it pushes you through. Now, remember I was saying that the 2 chord is very much the 5 chord, just with 1 note that really functions as the. There's the 2 chord, that's the note for the 2 chord. It wants to go down to the 3rd of the 5 chord, and then that resolves into the 1 chord. All right, so if we come up here to this G, or we'll do the G here, right? We can go G. D minor to G, which is 2 5 1 in C minor. In a minor key, the 2 chord is minor 7 flat 5 or half diminished. All right, take my word on that one. We don't have time for that much theory. So, but you've got this 2 5 1, and then 2 5 1. So I've got all these places where I can use the 2 5 to lead in. And as I play that, I'm sure what you're hearing is the fact that the chord progression is moving. It never stays static. All right, and then there's other things that you can add to these chords. You can do a tritone substitution, all right, where you're actually taking the 3rd and 5th of a chord and moving the root a tritone away, or a flatted 5, which gives you all these color tones, but that actually creates even more drive or tension towards the 1 chord, right? And we'll talk about tritone subs at another time, but they're a really cool sound that also helps you with this idea that you're moving forward. Now, as far as comping goes, you know, the idea is that you've got this basic chord progression, all right, and we've learned some rhythms that we can use to play those chords, really basic ones. This is not complicated or particularly sophisticated stuff that I'm talking about. It's just to kind of get you going. But then we also have some other things that we can use to drive from one chord into the next, right? Using those 2 5s. And then 2 5 2 5 1 6 2 5, and that's the turnaround. So in a traditional blues, the turnaround might be like this, and it's basically a descending lick against the one chord and then into the 5, right? And then I'll bring us back to the top. In a jazz, one of the more common turnarounds is 1 and then 6 2 5. And you can either do it with the chords that happen in the major key, so B flat major 7, G minor 7, I'm playing a minor 9, C minor 7, F7, right? And that's all very diatonic and very clear. Or you could do it a little bit bluesier, where they're all dominant 7 chords. Right? Or you could just go 1 and then 2 5, right? The thing about the 1 and the 6 chord is that they're very, very close to each other in sound. You can get away with playing one and not the other, or you can hit it, just basically fill space. Okay. All right, how are you guys doing? Questions? Complaints? All right. Nice thing is, like, once you get used to this idea of comping, or especially where you're using like those 2 5s to move from chord to chord, you can even play that in your line. I'm playing a blues, B flat. All right, so I just went 2 5 2 5 into the 4 chord. All right. All right. So my blues. Into the 4 chord, there's diminished. Right, that's the D minor to the G. And you can even hear it within the line, and then 2. That's the 5. 1. Tritone sub on the 6. 2 5. So let me play for a second and just kind of listen to what I'm playing. 1 2 1 2 3. Kind of butchering everything tonight. I'm just playing like crap. But hopefully within those lines that I was playing, you were hearing the chords moving. And you were hearing, like, if I'm playing the 1 chord, that obviously is heading somewhere. We just moved to the 4 chord. Or that's heading to the 2 chord, right? You may not necessarily know, it's the 2 chord or the 4 chord or any of that other stuff, but what you are hearing is that line is heading somewhere, and you're waiting for it to resolve into its new home, right? And that's one of those things. You learn the stuff about harmony relative to how you accompany people, but then you can also use that information to create your lines or make more interesting lines. There's a great Josh Smith video. There's actually a couple of them where he talks about this, where people ask about, like, well, how do you sound jazzy if you're not really a jazz player? And for him, a lot of it, right, is that he'll play a chord, right, and then we talk about, like, in blues, so B flat, and there's the E flat for the 4 chord. A lot of times you're going to approach that next chord with like a half step above. So he'll actually just play those notes in his line. So he'll play B flat. That was a bad example, but all right, he just played that E flat. Basically a half step above, so it's actually E, 7, and then resolved it there, and now it sounds all altered and interesting, and he's not really doing anything other than just playing the chords he would normally comp. He's basically tracing out those notes. So, okay, questions? Anyone? Bueller, I got 6 of you guys. This is one of those lessons I kind of wanted to, I had an idea of what I wanted to do. I'm kind of covering this stuff, but I'm hoping that you guys are able to kind of follow me on this, because it's a lot of assuming that you guys have done the previous lessons where we talked about, you know, scales and chord construction and harmony, and then you know, we're basically taking it up a step here, and we're also talking about rhythms and things like that. A lot of times, like, so there's this tune. This tune I really like playing called "Beautiful Love," and I just don't play much jazz right now, so I'm pretty rusty. But like, I'll play through it. I did a little bit at the beginning. And the chords, basically it's like 2, 5, 1 in D minor, and then 2, 5, 1 in F, and then 2, 5, yeah, D minor, that's the 4 chord, and then we've got this flat 6 to 5, like you'd find like in B.B. King kind of tune. And then you got this weird chord here, and then you end up having like a 2-5 again, right? So a lot of these tunes, when you're playing jazz tunes, are just cycles of those 2-5s. You get used to comping them. That's one thing. Once you get used to comping, right, it becomes a lot easier to play if you can arpeggiate them. Right, so there's D minor, there's D minor 7 flat 5, here's the A7, there's the D minor 7, G minor, 7, C, 7, F major 7, that's E minor 7 flat 5, A7 flat 9, and then D minor, right? All of this is kind of interconnected, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. When all else fails, play a blues scale over it. So, okay. Unless you guys have questions, I might split. Yeah, I was gonna do maybe some Latin stuff, but I think I talked about a lot of stuff that maybe I should let you guys digest. And then the nice thing is that you guys can always come back, ask questions, like, and I get the feeling that you guys will have questions next time you see me, and I'll answer them and kind of hopefully sort some of this stuff out for you. So, anyway. All right, guys. I'm going to take off, have some dinner, and I will see you all on Saturday. Thanks a lot.